Said to be responsible for spreading coronavirus in Botswana, truck drivers face COVID-19 testing delays for days at a time.
Reaffirming Nigeria's military commitment to peace and unity, the Air Task Force vows to provide necessary equipment and support to strengthen the fight against insurgency and other security challenges.
The canine frontline on the battle against COVID-19. In Germany, trained dogs sniff out coronavirus for the troops.
Hello and welcome to Africa 54. I'm Chamberlain Usoa Channels Television here in Lagos. I'm joined by Vincent Makori at Voice of America in Washington.
Well, thanks. I'm Vincent Makori, happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, the Voice of America has reduced staffing at VOA headquarters in Washington. So as you see, our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future. We appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Chamberlain Uso in Lagos brings you that story.
The Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, is reaffirming the commitment of the military to Nigeria's peace and unity. He said this during the visit to troops of the Air Task Force Operation Lafia Dole in Yola, the Adamawa State capital. According to him, the force remains committed to providing necessary equipment and support to strengthen the fight against insurgency and other security challenges in the country. Channels Television's correspondent Freedom Haslon compiled the report.
It has been a tradition of the Chief of Air Staff to visit and celebrate festive periods with troops of the Air Task Force fighting insurgency in the Northeast. The essence is to help fill the void created by not being able to celebrate with their close family members because of their deployment at the front line. This is with the aim of fostering relationship and comradeship amongst the troops for greater performance as they continue their efforts in the fight against insurgency. The Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, is represented by the Chief of Communications and Information System, NAF Headquarters, Abuja. In his address to the troops, the Chief of Air Staff assures of their commitment to the total elimination of insurgency and banditry in the country.
Let me assure us that the procurement of additional platforms, such as the Super Tucano, the GF-17, unmanned aerial vehicles, and other additional platforms would certainly be game changers for our operations. We are committed to ensuring the total elimination of insurgency and banditry in our country.
He calls on the troops to always avoid acts that could portray the noble profession of the Nigerian Air Force in bad light. Earlier in his remarks, the Commander 153 Base Services Group Yola lauds the efforts of the Chief of Air Staff for providing the needed support as they discharge their constitutional duty.
The Nigerian Air Force Base Yola will continue to play its pivotal role in the fight against insurgency. We are committed to ensuring a safe nation. The Chief of the Air Staff has provided us with necessary requirements in cash and in kind to enable us effectively and efficiently discharge our duties as we are committed to the discharge of the assigned task.
The Adamawa Cultural Troupe is on ground to provide entertainment for the soldiers.
For more on addressing Nigeria's security situation, we are joined by security consultant Onyekachi Adekoya. At the moment, we are currently facing security challenges. How would you assess the methods adopted by security agencies to address the challenges?
Thank you for the question. Honestly, if you judge effort by results, then the level of insecurity perhaps is the best indicator of the results of the current approach to security in the country. I think just the other day, it's my understanding that in the Northwest, within the first 6 months or thereabout, about 500 people have lost their lives, just at the level of banditry there. So we judge by results. We don't seem to feel very comfortable with the level of banditry and insecurity, and that in its own self is beginning to cause another problem of restiveness, because we're now beginning to see protests spiral or come out of this level of insecurity, where people are protesting in the north, in the south, in Lagos, and in some parts of the country. And if this whole situation is not well managed, we're most likely going to have a bigger problem. So in all, there's not much to say about what is currently being done.
Now, intelligence gathering and surveillance are integral when it comes to tackling security challenges. How well are these methods being used by our security agencies to prevent crime before they are committed?
Well, so security agencies, if you look at the police IRT, one would say that the Super Cop carry seems to be doing well in using intelligence to perhaps break certain kidnap rings and bring in major kidnap kingpins. As a country, we have the NIA, we have the DSS, the military has its DMI, almost every agency of states that has business with the use of force also has one intelligence unit or department or the other. Even the EFCC also has intelligence units. To be fair to the security forces, they're a bit incapacitated by the level of the support they get from even the government itself and the people of Nigeria, because you can't generate intelligence within a silo. People must come forward with intelligence. So there's a challenge of trust, challenge of equipment and resourcing. Some will argue that certain agencies like the DSS perhaps have better equipment for intelligence gathering than the police, that is the lead agency for internal security. And some will argue also that they are not seeing enough synergy between the NIA and the DSS in finding linkages to the multinational or transnational criminal networks that are beginning to plague some parts of the north and the northeast. So yes, there's intelligence, there's paucity of funding, there's a lack of equipment, there's to some extent not enough support from the citizenry. So all this combined and poor training also makes our current effort very ineffective.
And considering how insecurity impedes development, what would you advise authorities to do better to secure the country?
What I think has to be done critically is we must bite the bullet at this point in our development as a nation and take policing back to the states. The country is too diverse and it's too big. The complexities are rather becoming very steep, and the situation is very fluid for a centralized approach. Every approach, sensible approach to security must be local. So we must take policing first back to the states. That will free up the military, to be able to better engage on the protection of our territorial integrity. So I think the emphasis on security has to come back local. And until we do that, the prognosis doesn't look good for the country. And any approach we bring out would rather be only cosmetic.
Onyekachi Adekoya, thank you for joining us today on Africa 54.
Kenya's Ministry of Health says the number of mental health cases have jumped dramatically during the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the country's mental health task force, 25% of coronavirus outpatients and 40% of in-hospital patients suffer from mental health issues such as depression. But more Kenyans are seeking help and speaking up about it. Mohammed Yusuf reports.
Sheila Orono is meeting her counselor to get help for a mental health problem that has grown worsen in recent months.
I just wanted to be alone, to I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to do anything. But now I've gone back to my normal self. I can do something. I can even listen to a music. Like the normal me has come back. I was heading to. But now with the therapy sessions and the need for me to come out and say that I'm suffering from bipolar, like a mental illness.
This small center in Nakuru County receives several patients suffering from different mental health issues.
And just helping them to have psychological resilience, to realize that even during this moment, during the pandemic, where there are chances of heightened depression, that it doesn't mean that it's a season that will be there forever, but then during this process they can have what we call psychological resilience for them to be able to cope and understand that they can still bounce back.
The World Health Organization defines mental health as a well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities and can cope with the normal stresses of life. This mother of three suffered COVID-19-like symptoms in March. After a few days, she was picked up by health workers dressed in protective gear.
You can see some 1, 2, 3 people understand you and talk to you or associates with you, but there are those who are so illiterate, who don't believe that you can be healed.
Frank Njenga says many Kenyans suffer mental illness without knowing it.
If you look at a family with 5 people, 2 parents and 3 children, at one point or another, one of them, at one point or another in their lives, will suffer from a mental illness of one sort or another. In other words, 20% of Kenyans, whether we like it or not, will at one point or another have a mental health need.
With the pandemic taking a toll on people's mental state, the Kenyan government is urging its citizens to seek help if they need it at this trying time. Mohammed Yusuf for VOA News, Nakuru, Kenya.
Somalia has set up its first disaster warning center to better manage hazards in the country, including floods and locusts. Analysts at the newly opened facility expect that the data and information collected there will enhance the capacity of national agencies to deal with natural and man-made threats in the country.
Somalia has unveiled its first ever early warning centre designed to help the country predict disasters. And it could prove to be incredibly useful. Somalia has already suffered from flooding and a low-cost invasion this year. The centre is located at the government building in a former United Nations compound in Mogadishu. Analysts there are monitoring the latest satellite data, from temperatures to wind pressure. Its director, Kader Sheikh Mohammed, hopes that the data it collects will save lives.
Finding the accuracy data which may save life is one of the main important for us, and we look for and find wherever we can find it.
The centre opened in June and it's funded by Saudi Arabia through the United Nations World Food Programme. The idea came after cycles of floods and drought caused widespread food shortages, including a famine in 2011 that killed over 250,000 people.
The main challenge that we faced was the training we had to receive when the center was first set up. We all studied many other subjects. The training was so difficult for us, but now we have adapted and work here normally.
According to the United Nations, of Somalia's 15 million people, 5.2 million currently need aid. The violence in conflict-stricken Somalia has also destroyed almost all the country's infrastructure and has driven many educated Somalis abroad. Because of this, officials say that they initially struggled to recruit skilled workers locally for the centre. But it's now fully staffed by Somalis, something that will help remove language barriers in case of emergency and also speed up the overall response time to disasters.
We remind you to visit our website, channelstv.com, for news and other programming around the clock. You can also find us at youtube.com/channelsweb. Still to come, a pandemic inspired South Africa's diamond market. With lockdowns comes proximity, kindled romance, and feeling good spending. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent Makori in Washington. Botswana's truck drivers, who deliver the majority of the landlocked country's goods from COVID-hit South Africa, are also responsible for 80% of the country's reported coronavirus cases. Health authorities started testing all truck drivers for the virus in May, delaying them at the border for days at a time. From Gaborone, Candice Dube reports on their plight.
Trucker Wisiso Balati used to look forward to his daily drive from his home country Botswana to pick up goods in neighboring South Africa. But since the COVID-19 pandemic, border trips for truckers like him have become a nightmare of being tested and forced to wait up to 5 days for results. Balati says the conditions at the border check are awful, with no food vendors or proper toilets.
It is tough. There are times when we think of quitting. Where we go to in South Africa, there are high cases of coronavirus. What we are asking for is to be treated with dignity, as we provide an essential service.
Officials in Botswana say with nearly 500,000 cases of the fast-spreading virus in South Africa, testing people who cross the border is vital. After Botswana recorded a new daily record for confirmed cases, truckers, especially from South Africa, are being watched carefully.
These are largely border cases, and 80% of these 50 cases were non-citizen. So it also tells a story where the threat level or the pressure of risk is based. It is at the border.
Analyst Lawrence Okeditse says the pandemic should be a wake-up call for Botswana's reliance on South African goods.
This COVID thing has proven that the country is in a precarious position, particularly when you look into its dependence on South Africa. The country needs to be at a point where it now can depend on itself for, a good number of vital supplies. We import literally everything.
Botswana's government figures show South Africa accounted for nearly 3/4 of the country's import bill as of April this year. For the moment, nothing has changed and the truckers remain vulnerable to the coronavirus. Of Botswana's 739 COVID-19 cases, 620 have been truck drivers testing positive at the country's entry points. Candice Dube for VOA News, Gaborone.
Before the pandemic, demand for diamond in South Africa was low, but some of those in the business of polishing rough diamonds that South African miners unearthed say they've been pleasantly surprised by increased patronage during the lockdown. They believe rising demand is fueled by proximity kindled romance and feel-good spending. Take a look.
South Africa's diamond industry, famed for sales the world over and supplying gems for the British Crown Jewels, is looking closer to home to revive its fortunes following the coronavirus slump. South African cutting and polishing firm Nungu Diamond said its custom-made jewelry sales have grown 60% since South Africa imposed a strict lockdown in March. Customers used their weeks at home for online consultations and were lining up for their purchases. One store reopened in June.
Never let a good disaster go to waste. I'm by no means suggesting that COVID-19 is a good disaster. What I'm basically saying is there has been opportunity in it, and we were fortunate to see the opportunity to say, let's use social media, let's use different platforms to remain relevant. So to answer your question in short, simply, yes, it hasn't affected our business adversely, thank God, and we continue to grow even through this challenging period.
Bucking the trend of rising unemployment, Nungu has hired an in-house jewelry designer, joining a team of 5 polishers and 9 jewelers. Nungu says jewelry prices have held steady. Profit margins, however, could improve as lower global demand has depressed the price of uncut, unpolished rough stones bought from the mines. Thorco's Diamond, another South African company whose business was based on selling rough and polished stones, said it was turning to jewelry. So far this year, the company has sold less than 20 carats and profits have fallen 65% as the exports that account for more than half of its business dried up. Thorco's hopes its new line in earrings will appeal to the local market.
We supply more than 500 carats, from half carat to 1.5 carat. 2 carat, probably 20% of that whole chunk. So what that means is that due to COVID, I mean this year, I mean we've only sold less than 20 carats. So you can imagine in terms of revenue how much we've done.
Dalami said they will be launching a jewelry line early next year.
Experts agree that until there is an effective vaccine against the coronavirus, the best countermeasures remain social distancing, masks, and frequent hand washing. Early detection can help control the spread, and as VOA's Arash Arabasadi reports, German troops are already training their four-legged counterparts.
Recently at this academy in Ulm, Germany, Army trainers tested a new weapon in the fight against the coronavirus. German Defense Minister Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer says this dog training program is a first of its kind.
The school is unique for the military, but even in an international context, it is a special asset that we can offer. Here it is not just people being trained at school, but dogs and people training side by side.
The dogs can't sniff out the actual virus, but they can detect the biochemical changes it causes in saliva. These dogs produce results with samples as small as 100 microliters.
To put it simply, we're investigating whether service dogs can be used to detect COVID-19. Not because they can smell the virus itself, but they can smell the biochemical processes and the changes caused by the virus.
Kramp-Karrenbauer says while tests are encouraging, studies remain ongoing.
I want to make clear here the next steps, like, for example, differentiating between coronavirus and influenza, or to differentiate an active carrier are all questions to be answered. And so we'll need more months to be able to offer up clear results.
Military dog trainers and the Hanover University of Veterinary Medicine are currently working with a variety of breeds on a rewards-based system where dogs get treats for properly identifying tainted saliva. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News, Washington.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word from Lagos.
Well, many thanks, Vincent. We look forward to bringing you another show next week. Remember, channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Chamberlain Uso. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.